So I think that AI it's like any tool, right? When you think of a knife, right? It depends
Mhm.
whose hand the knife is in, what the knife does. A knife in the hands of a surgeon, it saves lives. And a knife in the hands of a murderer, it takes lives. But it's
Yeah.
a knife in both situations. And AI similarly has this duality. It's absolutely making it easier for lower skilled attackers to
Mhm.
perform sophisticated attacks.
10,
8, 7, 6, 5.
4, 3, 2.
Ted, hello. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. How are you?
Great. Good to see you.
You've been a busy man. I've been following a lot of your LinkedIn posts. Recently, you just released your second book, Hacker. It seems to be going really, really well. Tell us a little bit about the book and the general premise.
Yeah, it's been exciting bringing this to life. So the premise is that it teaches how to think like a hacker,
Yeah.
and specifically how to apply that to anything. So not just how to build better, more secure systems, although that is the, pulsing heartbeat of how those of us from the hacking community think about how do you do this. But I think that the hacker mindset is a superpower. And I think what it does is it fosters independent thinking. It encourages challenging convention, challenging norms, and really just finding these overlooked pathways that everyone else misses. And so I wanted to write a book that takes this really niche expertise, like a subset of a subset. It's like not just tech, not just cybersecurity, ethical hacking, which is my field. Take
Yeah.
these insights and then teach them to everyone. Like, how can you adopt a new paradigm? And so that's what I'm trying to do with the book.
Great. So you've been around ethical hacking for quite some time. Let's run through a little bit of your history and why you're the expert in ethical hacking. You want to just share the last 10 years, last decade of your career with us?
Yeah. So how I have these insights is I'm in the really lucky position that I run a company of ethical hackers. And
Yeah.
for people who aren't familiar what that is, ethical hackers are just like the bad guys that you read about in the news who hack companies and governments and schools and hospitals. We use all the same tools and techniques and approaches and methods as the bad guys, but we do so in order to improve the security of a system. So our
Yeah.
company is called ISE, which stands for Independent Security Evaluators, and companies literally hire us to hack them. And so we work with everything from like the titans of tech, like the big famous tech companies that everyone listening to this is familiar with, all the way down to funded startups, smaller companies that are developing something to change the world. And what that means is that I'm not trying to just pitch my company. I wouldn't be upset if people listening want to hire us, but I'm trying to illustrate where my point of view comes from. My point of
Yeah.
view comes from working with these companies who are building things, and we've seen it all. We've seen all the ways that companies get it right and the ways that companies get it wrong when it comes to building secure tech. And so through just observation and, of course, being in the hacker community myself because of what we do, and we've done all kinds of just cool stuff. We were the first company to hack the iPhone, first company
Yeah.
to hack Android OS when that came out. We've hacked cars and medical devices and password managers, dating apps recently. There's all kinds of cool stuff. And we do that in order to understand the problems that exist and then advocate for how to solve them.
So I want to double click on that for a second. Why would a company want to be hacked? What is the importance of that?
Well, let me answer your question with a different question, which would be, why would any company want to be better at anything than they are today? And that maybe there's a lot of depth to that question. Like, well, why? I mean, make more money is certainly why a company wants to be better at anything. But I think it's somewhat of an irrefutable truth that most companies want to improve. They want to deliver better services, better products. They want to outmaneuver competition, whatever it is. They want to improve. Executives want to improve. Salespeople want to improve. The marketing pros want to improve. The service delivery people want to improve. Admins everyone wants to improve. That's what security is about. Security is not about, although it's a noble aspiration, it's unrealistic to say we want to be completely 100% unhackable. Like, it doesn't exist. It's not possible.
Yeah.
But what is possible is, can it be better? Can it be more resilient? Can the defenses perform better. And it's the actions we take today are what result in that better state arriving tomorrow. So the kind of companies who want to invest in security, like actually invest, not there is an important distinction here. There's plenty of companies who are like kind of hand wavy, like, oh, we do security. And they talk about a bunch of stuff that really isn't actually improving their security posture.
Yeah.
They're the majority of companies. The more progressive companies, though, the ones who are like, we want to do this better. What they want to do, why they would hire someone like us is they're like, well, first of all, we're promising to our customers that we have a secure solution. So we better find out that we're actually delivering that. But also they're like, look, we're constantly iterating. We're releasing a new version, a better version, has new features, whatever. That is introducing new ways for the bad guys to attack it. So let's figure out ourselves what the problems are. Because as one of the things I talk about in my first book, the security vulnerabilities, they exist. The question is not whether they exist. They do. The question is, who finds them? Is it the bad guy who finds them and exploits them? Or is it the good guy who finds them and fixes them? So that's the mindset of the kind of organization who would hire someone like us, because it can be maybe emotionally distressing at times to be like, I built this thing and does all these awesome stuff and I've spent all this money on it and I have my like professional reputation attached to this. Now let me have someone from the outside come in and tell me what's wrong with it. That takes a special kind of person to be willing to do that. But those are the kinds of people who build great things and who change the world.
So it kind of feels like to me that it's proactive versus reactive. Or like a favorite saying I have at the moment is, you know, when you're deploying, obviously I'm in the AI space. And so for a lot of people, they're deploying eyes wide shut, right? You're deploying an application. You don't actually know type of vulnerabilities that may occur because you didn't look, you didn't test for them, you didn't stress test an application. How have you seen some of the security professionals that you've worked with use your proactive strategy of finding out under pressure how their system can be hacked to build a better product?
That distinction is exactly right. So the move for sure should be proactive, not reactive. And here's a metaphor to think about. So like when engineers build a bridge, they don't just build it and are like, see what happens. And then like, you know, it breaks and a car falls off into the river. And you're like, oh, that's too bad. We take bridge construction seriously. And here's what we're doing to remedy this. That's the way that most companies actually think about building their product. They're like, I don't know, we'll just build the thing. We'll figure it out. And I get the market forces that drive that, like, you know, speed to market sometimes is the difference between winning or losing. I totally empathize with that. But really, it's about thinking like that company who's building the bridge, they stress test it first. And they're like, how's it going to handle adverse weather conditions? What about an earthquake? What happens in high winds? What happens if there's a lot of cars like stuck on the bridge and the traffic jam? What if a concrete mixing truck crosses and it's heavier than the normal car? Yeah. So it's that proactive, like thinking ahead, including trying to anticipate the things you hadn't anticipated yet. And that's one of the things that the people who work for us, like they love about it. Because they're constantly looking at something maybe they've never even seen before. And they're like, I don't even know what to be looking for yet, but I'm going to figure it out. And then they put on that hacker, you know, the bad guy hat. Hackers can be good and can be bad. But they'll put on the bad guy hat and they'll say like, well, if I wanted to attack this, where would I start? And then they just kind of go from there.
So when you're designing a strategy to stress test a system, it doesn't have to be an AI system. It's so ingrained in me to say AI systems. That's what I talk about all day. But when you're stress testing an AI system to look for these vulnerabilities, obviously you just said they all break, right? There's always a breaking point. How much of that breaking point is in realistic real world scenarios versus like 0 days and some of the more far-fetched scenarios? Or is there a balance? Do your customers come to you and sort of say like, go for the gamut? We want 0 day scenarios right through to just everyday world conditions that people are interacting with our applications. Like how do you design that process?
Yeah, it's a really good question because sometimes there is some misdirection, especially when there's like headline news of XYZ company, you know, has some security vulnerability that researchers found, and they'll say things like, oh, that's not practical, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So there's often a debate of like, how realistic is this? Well, the way to answer this question is to think about this reality that attackers, they're just like you and me. They're just like every person who works in every sector in the world, in that they're looking for the best return on their investment. And that investment is dollars, but also effort. And so they're going to look at something and they're going to say, I could spend whatever the number is to try to find this super elegant, never before seen 0-day vulnerability. Or I could go look at first the more common things that most people inject into their systems unwittingly. Let's start there. And that's what most attackers do. And when we're doing our security assessments, we'll look at the proverbial low-hanging fruit first as well, because that's what the attacker is going to do. They're going to look at it to say like, hey, there's these lists out there that exist of the most common vulnerabilities. There's a list that just came out recently that's the most common vulnerabilities in AI systems. There's one for web apps. And these lists are the things where it's like, these are the issues that most commonly occur. So an attacker is going to say like, well, let's explore those first. And so as the defender, we should also explore those first. And once you determine that maybe they don't exist, then you can move on to the more elegant and harder to find issues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So clicking out on that again, right? We're talking a little bit about the threat landscape. It's expanding daily, and AI seems to be fueling the ability for now a script kiddie or somebody without a hacking background to have some tools to be able to try to hack or gamify your system in some way, shape, or form. How much of that are you seeing in your world already, that hackers or just average people now have AI tools that they can use to break systems?
So I think that AI it's like any tool, right? It's a double-edged sword. It's when you think of a knife, right? It depends whose hand the knife is in, what the knife does. So a knife in the hands of a surgeon, it saves lives. And a knife in the hands of a murderer, it takes lives. But it's a knife in both situations. So AI is like that. AI is a tool. And AI similarly has this duality, which is it's absolutely making it easier for lower skilled attackers to perform sophisticated attacks. I think a really good illustrative example is when we think about how much better the phishing types of emails or text messages that we all get every single day, they're getting really, really good.
Really good.
Because one of the major red flags up to this point was you'd receive this message in English and it was just like broken English, weird punctuation, phrased in a way that like no person speaks to another person like this in English, like if that's their native tongue. And for attacks that are coming from non-native English speaking areas, it was easy to flag. Like, okay, this random text message of like, do you have an umbrella? Who texted me out of the blue saying, do I have an umbrella? Like, what is this? What's happening here? But they're getting better. The typos are going away. They're phrased now in ways that like native English speaker might speak to another native English speaker. And again, this isn't about native English speaking versus not native English speaking. That's not like not trying to disparage others, but I'm saying like for attacks that come from other countries, that's a red flag. And that red flag is now gone away because AI's made it easier for them to write messages that sound correct. So that's just like an illustrative example of where things are harder now. Like they're better for the attacker, but they're also better for the defender too, because now we have all these tools that can glean through data sets that to do manually a human like just wouldn't be able to do it or wouldn't be able to do it quickly. So you've got these, it's making it worse and it's making it better at the same time situation. And I'm an optimistic person. I think that it will net out to be a benefit for security. I do not think it is a benefit for security today. I think we are in the wild, wild west of AI.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've been doing a lot of work mapping, obviously, different interaction points and the threat landscape. And every single second we uncover a new, whether you're connecting into an API or you're connecting into a different system for any of your AI tools, it's a completely new threat landscape that you have to map back out again. And the vulnerabilities can occur at any one of those given points. So how complex are the type of systems that you work on? Obviously, hacking iPhone and hacking Android, like it's a pretty big deal to hack any passwords on those type of accounts. But what are the typical type of customer profiles that you work with? Do you have any examples? I know we can't talk about your customers specifically, and we'll obviously always protect their identity in this, but would love to just dive into the weeds tangibly on some of the actual tangible use cases that you've ethically hacked and how you've ethically obviously created a process or a program for them to protect themselves.
Yeah, we work in a lot of different sectors. One that I find to be really, really interesting, and I think people listening to a show like this might find it interesting, is we work with a lot of the movie studios.
Nice.
And movie studios, they really, really care about security of the content before it hits the theater, because the business model, although maybe streaming might be changing it, but historically the business model has been that you spend, 100, 200, $300 million producing a big blockbuster film, and then you make like 85% of that back in the first 3 weeks of theatrical release. So they're like, this has to get to theatrical release before it starts getting pirated. And then on the other side, you've got this really, really motivated group of fans who want to see these things before they come out. There's all kinds of benefits to organized crime, groups that might want to make money by stealing these assets before they get to theatrical release. So it's a really interesting and complex scenario. And so we're often tasked to help figure out, how do we make sure that systems used in the production of movies don't allow an attacker to get access to those assets. And so there's a project we worked on recently that was pretty cool, actually, the attack scenario, which was that one of the things you do first thing in security assessment is you determine, does it work the way that they say it's supposed to work? So that's like the first thing. Like they say, like, it works this way to verify or authenticate users. And so we go through that process and we determine that the system actually worked the way that it was supposed to. Meaning, because this system works for multiple studios. So like a studio who makes, certain types of superhero blockbusters, and then a different studio who makes a certain type of superhero blockbusters. Like, you shouldn't have access to both unless you've been provisioned access to both. And so we determined that was in fact the case. We couldn't have access to all the other studio content. Yeah. But hackers don't stop there. We then said, okay, it works the way it's supposed to. Let's see if there's other ways. And long, complex, technically dense story shortened. Basically what we discovered was that there is a feature in the system where you can back up certain assets. You're working on a project, you could do an offline backup. And we determined that we found a way to predict the project identifiers for all the projects in the system. And then just by knowing that project identifier, we could back up a project. And once we had the offline backup, we could open it. So that meant we could open every single movie that this system provided access to, including those that we didn't have provisioned access to. Now, of course, we're the good guys, so that was a really, really good thing, because they said, oh, great, I'm glad you found that. We can now fix it. And they did, and we helped them figure out how to remediate it. But I think it was a really, really cool story because, well, first of all, for the team that was working on that, talk about a dopamine rush. When you're like, do this thing, and all of a sudden, like, bloop, there's this movie you're not supposed to see. It's pretty cool. And then to be able to go to a client and to tell them, like, hey, here's this problem you didn't know about. You spent a considerable amount of money on us to help you find and fix it, and you are now able to do that. Like, just every part about it was just so cool. And then that client gets to now turn around and go to their studios, their studio customers, and say, look, not only do we take security seriously, but let me show you how. Here's the thing we found. Like, this is an elegant attack scenario, and we discovered this. This existed. We didn't know about it, but now it's resolved, and here's how you know that it's resolved. So stuff like that, like, we get to do every single day. It's just really, really cool and rewarding.
So it sounds like the proactive approach has definitely been great for your customers. Why is that important now over bolting this on after you've released a product, or even if it's after an afterthought, after you've been hacked?
So it's actually less expensive and more effective to think about security throughout the process than to wait until the end and just try to do it at the end. So I use this metaphor to try to illustrate this, because people sometimes are like, that doesn't make sense, because if you're going to spend whatever X dollars on a security assessment, why do it on day one when you can do it when you launch on day, like, 365 or something? You can save that money, you can whatever. And it's just a really, really bad way of thinking. This is oversimplifying it, but this metaphor I think helps illustrate it. So do you ever make smoothies at your house, like in a blender?
Always love them daily.
So you take the way a blender works for people who don't make a smoothie, right? You put your like spinach, your banana, your peanut butter, whatever. You throw it all in there. You blend the thing up. You pour it in your cup. You drink it. And you have a choice in that moment. You can either clean the blender right then, or you can wait. And what most people do is they wait. They're like, I don't want to deal with scrubbing that thing right now. I got a busy day. I got to go do the thing. I'll deal with it later. You come back later and all that spinach particles and the peanut butter, it is like crystallized on this thing. You now have to disassemble it. You got to scrub it. It's like, it's so much work to fix it. If instead in that moment, you got the smoothie in like your left hand, you got the blender in your right hand, you just put a little bit of soap, a little bit of water in the blender, and you run it one more time, the blender literally cleans itself.
It's crazy.
And then you rinse it out and you put it in the dryer and it's done. And that's what it's like when you build security in. It's a teeny little bit of effort that saves you profound effort down the road. And then if we think that, if we take it back to now, like what that means for security, you're building a system. Let's say you've built this system, you built it in a certain way. You get all the way to the end, you've launched the product, you now have a security assessment, and the discovery of the assessment leads to the fact that, hey, the way that you verify users, it actually doesn't work. It's easy to bypass. You might have to rebuild a whole element to the system. That might take you months. It might cost you huge dollars. It's going to redirect effort from other things. And it was all avoidable with, instead of that, go back to the very beginning and it's just a whiteboard. And you're like, well, we're going to take this circle and we're going to draw an arrow and it goes to this square. And you're like, well, here's how I'd bypass that. Oh, okay. Erase it. Make it go to this square instead. That works. Build that.
Yeah.
Now you're building it once rather than twice. And it takes a person who has foresight and vision to be able to realize, like, I'm avoiding future pain if I do that right now. And most people don't think that way. Like, most people look at people's like eating habits, right? They don't think about how 10 years from now, that's going to cause some sort of like heart condition because you eat like garbage today. But some people do think that way. And the people who have that foresight, they're the ones who are able to be more proactive, save themselves effort, save themselves headache, save themselves time, save themselves money.
Yeah. So your book is currently called, the new release is Think Like a Hacker, correct? Why is
That's
that?
the subtitle. Yeah. So it's Inner Hacker, a new way of thinking. And then, sorry, what you said isn't the subtitle. That's the main premise. The premise is we want to think like a hacker.
Why is that important for executives that are building tech today? Like, what does it really boil down to if you start to put on the I've got a hat on, the hacker hat, say that 10 times really quickly. Why is that important? Why should I care?
Innovation would probably be the first thing that I would say to executives. So what the hacker mindset does is it helps you deviate from norms. And ultimately, someone who's building something right now, an entrepreneur, they're trying to say, look, the world works in this way. What's over there? Like, where's the open blue water that I want to go after? And the hacker mindset does exactly that, because what the hacker mindset does is it helps you look at convention, the conventional way of doing things, and say, is there a different way? Is there a better way? And that's what innovation is. That's what entrepreneurship is. That's what gaining a competitive edge is. If all you did was do what everyone else does, you're just going to be like everyone else. And that's, I don't know, excellence doesn't exist in the masses. So an executive who's listening to this and says, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to enter a new market. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to unseat the incumbent. Like, there's a big player and I'm the new one and I need to unseat them. I need to figure out how I'm going to raise a huge amount of capital. And I don't necessarily have the expertise that these investors think that I need to have in order to get that money. But I have this idea and I know I'm going to execute it. The hacker mindset will help you think differently about how you solve those problems, because it's just about a new way of thinking. I mean, that's why literally the subtitle is a new way of thinking. It's, if everyone else thinks X, can you think Y?
I love that. I've always been called divergent. It's one of my favorite words. It's just really explaining like the different way of approaching things, and quite often find myself in a meeting where I just see something completely different, or I hear something completely different in the sense of way I'm structuring things. So I'll have to read the book to see what I can pull out. And I'm like, it's in Ted's book. It's a different way of thinking. It could be a framework. So you run and you founded the IoT Village at DEF CON. How many years have you had the IoT Village up for? What have you learned through the journey?
Yeah, we just actually this year just celebrated our 10th year of doing that. So for people watching who don't know what this is, let me just give a little bit of context. So DEF CON is the biggest hacker convention that exists. So there's other security conferences that maybe are bigger, but this is like for hackers. And it happens every year in Las Vegas. And it's just a bunch of people who think differently, getting together, trying to enhance their skills, build friendships, whatever. There's so much cool stuff you can do there, like from literally learning how computer systems work, how to hack things, but like lock picking, there's when you're on an airplane, in the airplane bathroom, there's the tape over a thing that says like, tamper evidence seal. There's a whole area to learn how to defeat those tamper evidence seals. Like there's all these things where like people are going to try to beat it. How do you beat it? So that's DEF CON. It's like all these people who are curious and non-conforming and just, interested to learn how, like the hacker mindset. That's kind of everyone who's there. And within that, they have these areas that focus on different topics. So like there's top areas that focus on car hacking. There's a new one this year focused on hacking boats. That was pretty cool. And our area focuses on internet connected devices. So we have an oven in there. We have a blender. We've got just like all kind like lights and things like that. And so our thing is we want people to come learn about the issues in these products and build their skills. So we have labs and stuff like that. One thing that's pretty cool that's come out of that was one of the things we do. We have a contest. It's called a capture the flag contest. And that's basically where you take basically a system that has some known vulnerabilities in it. And then if you are able to find exploitable paths, you get points, and whoever gets the most points wins. There's this thing at DEF CON. DEF CON's really big. Like people, like I said, are kind of unconventional. People are really into their badges there. So like you have the badge to get into the conference, just like any other conference. But then there's like this hierarchy of like badge status. There's like badge culture there. And so if people have certain badges, it's like, oh, you're a cool person. So like the badges that we get as organizers of the village, like you're kind of like celebrity status a little bit almost. So our staff who wears those around, they're always like, people are always wanting to talk to them. But then there's this one particular type of badge. There's no published criteria for how you earn it.
Okay.
And DEF CON gives it out, and it's called the black badge. And the black badge is basically for someone who does something super awesome. And if you win a black badge, if you're awarded a black badge, first of all, it's like the Hall of Fame, basically. So people who walk around this conference with a black badge on, they are seen as like celebrities. You'll see it. Like there's a person over there with a bunch of people around them taking pictures like, oh, there's probably a black badge winner. So it's really awesome to get a black badge. There's no published criteria. We created this contest that the winner of our contest, the contest was so rad the first year we did it, that the winner of it, DEF CON awarded them a black badge.
Wow.
And then we did it 3 more times. So in 10 years we've been doing this, our contest has resulted in 4 black badge winners, which outside of DEF CON, like probably no one knows. But in our world, it's pretty awesome. I mean, when you get a black badge, you have not only do you get the status, you get to go to the conference for free for life. It is literally a lifetime accolade. And so for us, that was cool. Like I mentioned earlier about how security is about getting better. And for me personally, and the people who work at our company and the companies that we run, excellence is one of our defining attributes. And so to build something that is at a level of excellence that produces those kinds of opportunities for people in our community, like that was just really cool to see.
That's amazing. So literally it's a badge of honor to walk around with a black badge.
Exactly.
What have some of the most impressive hacks you've seen in your IoT village, or some of the vulnerabilities that obviously you kind of know, you're planting some of them. I'm assuming you're putting devices there to be hacked. What are some of the things that caught you by left field from those that think differently and uncovered things that maybe you and your team hadn't seen yet? Is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
Yeah, in the early days of that, we did an additional type of contest. We don't do it anymore because there's just a lot of complexity to running it. We used to do an O-Day hunting contest. So it was like literally, if you can come and hack something at this event and resulting in a 0-day vulnerability. I don't even remember how we awarded, like who won or not. But as a result of that, we're talking like hundreds of O-days. I think by the time we stopped doing it, it was like 317 or something O-days this thing had produced. And so we saw stuff all over the gamut that devices people would bring. And the reason you'd bring it rather than just like doing it on your own would be you get access to other people. So like maybe you're working on a thing, you get stumped. There's someone sitting next to you and you're like, hey, I'm running into this issue. What do you think? And hackers are very collaborative in that way. There's a common misconception that hackers are like the lonely person with a hoodie in their, mother's basement. And I'm sure there are people like that for sure, but they're very collaborative. So they go there to go explore this together. And so some of the things we saw, like one guy had some stuff related to, wasn't the satellite itself, but it was some of the equipment on the ground that communicates with satellites. We saw another team bring some stuff related to, I can't remember if it was Spectrum or Comcast or it was one of those like cable providers, and how you can attack their equipment and get user information on like everyone who uses that particular cable provider. One was pretty funny. This guy brought a drone. So we had to go outside to watch the demo. We literally like in the 110-degree Vegas heat, we're all sitting outside in this parking lot, watch this guy do this demo, and he flies this drone up in the air. I don't know why he felt the need to do this, but he's got his keyboard and he just goes kill, and he pushes the button, and it shot the drone out of the sky, and this drone comes crashing down, and there were a whole like pool of reporters around. We've seen medical devices, like people have brought stuff they've gotten secondhand on like eBay or whatever. It's really hard to get a new medical device. Basically, they won't sell you a medical device if you're not a hospital, so you need to find creative ways to get one. But so people have brought medical devices and found ways to hack those, and so just runs the gamut, all kinds of cool stuff.
How hackable are wearables?
Talking about like Fitbit and things of that nature. Yeah. So one of the challenges with connected devices is that the smaller they are, the less physical space there is for computational power. And the less space there is for computational power, the less opportunity there is for robust security. So generally speaking, when you look at like a Tesla, a car that's basically a computer on wheels, versus like, say a smart ring that you wear around your finger, they're in remarkably different categories in terms of what they even are capable of doing. And then let alone even that contrast I just draw, you're talking about like a multi-billion-dollar company with resources, and usually the wearables are like, startups that don't have a ton of resources yet. So wearables, I don't want to disparage all wearables and say that they all have security flaws, but they tend to have more security flaws than larger, more expensive things, simply because of where their price point is. If you're buying something for $85, the investment in security just isn't going to be the same as something you're buying for $85,000. So that's just the practical reality of the world. And so I think the way people should think about wearables is what risk you're willing to accept. So for example, let's say you have one of those sleep tracker rings that you wear on your finger when you go to sleep. And what data does it track? It tracks your health data. So depending on who you are, you might find that acceptable or not acceptable. If you are a person who might be targeted in some sort of like assassination attempt, if you are a spy, if you're someone where your physical location cannot be disclosed, you probably shouldn't use those things. What if you're the average person every day who just like, a hacker's going to know about your heart rate, your sleep cycles, some of that personally identifiable information, then that's a choice for you to make about how you feel about that. But that's how you should think about it. Like, I'm going to hand this to someone else. How do I feel about that? Yeah. And a lot of times you're already handing that information to a company. So really, what's the difference? And then it's just a matter of, do you do good security hygiene? Like, are you reusing passwords and all that kind of stuff? Like, hopefully you're not doing that thing, because then once that thing gets hacked, they're going to use those passwords and try it on your bank.
So to use the same principle, right? And of course, like, trust me to bring it back to AI. We are on the You and AI podcast. For people that are building on foundation models and wrapping a layer around them and deploying AI on black boxes, how much of that are you seeing when somebody's not thinking about the hacker mindset and thinking about how a vulnerability may occur? Are you seeing customers of yours like not even thinking about testing some of these systems? If they are testing systems, what layer are they getting to? Is it just at the application layer? Yeah, I would love to spend some time just really thinking about AI applications and systems inside of products. And just now, obviously, now everyone seems to be building every product with AI, even if the product doesn't need AI, and then plugging in various different data pipelines. Yeah, what are you seeing in that space? How are you guys overcoming that? Are you getting work like that coming through, or do you see that being kind of something that's on the horizon?
Yeah, so to answer a question, well, our customers are thinking about security. I mean, that's why they're hiring us. But I think that in the aggregate, that is not what's happening for the most part. And I have this theory that I talk about. I call it the idiot cycle, and I should probably call it something else because that just feels too offensive, but we're going to go with it. And so this is what happens when there's innovation. The first step is there's something is innovated. Now, this is true for AI. Everything I'm going to describe was true when it was bring your own device, cloud computing, IoT, you name it. They all went through the same cycle. And the cycle is that first someone innovates something and it changes everything. It's like, oh, there's a new way capturing previously uncaptured revenue. So let's go after that. So that's the first stage, innovation. Then the second stage is the idiot cycle, the idiot stage, which is where people are like, as you described it, eyes wide shut, just going after the market capture. And I say idiot like jokingly, and in fact, maybe that word should probably be retired at this point. But the idea is it's people like proceeding irrationally, that's not well thought out in terms of the only thing they see are dollar signs. The only thing they see are how can I get to market fast? And they're doing that at the expense of thinking about security risk. And so they rush to market with these solutions that are woefully vulnerable. And then it's a long tail is the third phase, which is the improvement phase. And we have not entered that phase yet for AI, but for some of the other things I mentioned, like IoT, cloud, we definitely are in the improvement phase. We're probably pretty deep in the improvement phase at this point. And that's where we're seeing companies realize like, okay, we actually can build secure products. Let's do that. Let's start listening to all the security professionals out there, like, you know, banging pots and pans, being like, hey, listen, like slow down. We got to do this in a smarter way. And so, but I would say for what I'm seeing from this hype cycle, I don't know, we're probably a little ways off from that improvement part of the paradigm. So yeah, I think right now is a pretty, and this isn't to say that AI companies are stupid, and it isn't to say that AI companies aren't thinking about security, because I'm certain there's people listening to this who are like, Ted, what are you talking about? We're thinking about security right now. And I applaud those who have that reaction listening to this. You are in the minority. What I'm talking about is in the aggregate, like what most people are doing.
Yeah, it's funny. So obviously I swap from data pipeline world, working with large tech, to safety and security, and focusing all of my time thinking about how AI models, AI systems break, and what that means for humanity. And when you live and breathe something like you're living and breathing, it's hard not to think that way every day and then walk out and be like, what do you mean you're deploying an AI model and you haven't run it through like these basic tests? But the average person really doesn't think about what can break, right? And I think that's what you're communicating as well. It's flipping that switch and thinking like a hacker, so you can actually uncover where your weaknesses is, whether it's an AI tool or a system that you're deploying, whether it's a standard SaaS product, like you name it. How do we get more people in the room to have those conversations? Like, I like today how you spoke about security being an afterthought and why that's dangerous. Yet for most security professionals in any organization I know, they are always the after fact. They're not part of the product lifecycle. They're not included in those meetings in planning. They're definitely not being invited, in the majority, in being invited to the ideation sessions where they're actually building platforms. It's quite literally, okay, we're ready to deploy. Now try to make this secure. So how do you bring people together, the product owners, the builders, the executives, and the security professionals, to have those type of conversations?
I mean, that's a big reason that I'm doing things like this, like appearing on cool shows like yours, why I write books, why I do keynotes, is because one of the things I realized many years ago when I first entered this field, is I realized that what we're up against isn't actually really other companies like ours. Like when we're talking to a potential customer and we lose the project, it's not usually like, oh, we went with the other company who's kind of like you, but they have this particular thing that we like that you don't, or maybe they're X% something else. That's not usually the conversation we're having. They're like, we went with, and they describe something that is completely unrelated. They're like, we went with I don't know what the metaphor would be. It's like you go to get your knee replacement surgery, and that surgeon, and you tell the surgeon you're not going to hire them because you just hired an allergist. And they're like, what? Like, that's not at all the same thing. What are you talking about? So that's what made me realize, like, I need to be out there helping educate. And that's why, so when I think about, like, I've written 2 books now, and my first book was written for tech executives, for security professionals, for software developers, people who are close to it, people who can do something with security. And I wanted to equip them with this exact problem statement that you're describing. Like, how do we make sure that security is involved in the conversation? And then I realized that we need to go a step further. And that's where my second book is written for a general audience. Like, I need to go beyond just the security pros, just the security leaders. We need to be having everyone at a company understanding how hackers think. And how can I do that? How can I get someone who's, say, in marketing? How do I get someone who is in the janitorial team? How do I get these people who are nowhere near the tech part of any company and make this idea come to life for them? Relate it to their life. Like, give them a way to use the insights of how we build better, more secure systems, but make it not about security. Make it about how they can live a better life. And that's what I set out to do by saying, like, yes, this is how we build better, more secure systems, but here's how you can have new ways to get a new job, start a new company, get funding, any goal you want, you can apply these ideas to. So I think that's how I've been thinking about solving the scenario that you just described.
Yeah, it's definitely a different way of thinking. Something that, I'm going to have to read the book. I can't wait to read the book. So before we close out, there's a couple of things that I kind of want to touch on. First what does the future hold? The risk landscape is evolving in front of our eyes at a pace that we've never seen before. Technology is paving forward at a pace that human race has never seen before. And in between that, there's only a few companies that yours, mine, and a few others that are really focusing on stress testing, safety, security at this level, right? Thinking like a hacker. So what does the next couple of years hold if we get this wrong? And if you want to go the optimist route, what does it look like if we get it right?
Well, if we get it wrong, I think this is where the doomsday people.
Dum, dum, dum.
I mean, I think Terminator illustrated what happens if we get this wrong. But I am optimistic because I think what's going to happen is the world will change rapidly. So if we fast forward, let's say like 20 years from today, things will look very, very different. And sometimes, like, you might think of that and say, okay, well, what was the world like 20 years ago? How different are we from that? And I think the difference will be exponentially larger than that. I think it would be more like 20 years from today will be as different from today as maybe like 80 years ago was. So I don't think it's like a linear progression we're seeing an exponential progression. And so 80 years ago, it was like computers didn't exist. I don't even think we'd landed on the moon yet. There was like, the world was really, 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 really different. Unrecognizably so. And that is probably going to be true 20 years from now, but that's not a bad thing. I think technology, there's a lot of people who fear that AI is going to eliminate so many jobs that we're going to have some crises of poverty. And I think what's actually going to happen is we're going to eliminate jobs that's just the nature of the world. Like, technology innovates and, we eliminate jobs, but new jobs will be invented and new ways of innovating and creating and producing money and lifestyles and all this stuff. Like, all these things I think good things will happen. And as long as like the commercial interests align with humankind surviving, I think we're going to be fine. Whether or not those stay lined up forever, I don't know. You've certain AI futurists talking about, like, do we need humans anymore? It's like a little bit. I mean,
a little bit. We kind of need a purpose. Yeah, I've been going down a pretty deep road or rabbit hole around, like, what does it mean to be human? How do we validate ourselves? How do we feel and embody recognition, right? And I think back to being a kid, and for me in school, it was like when I solved a math problem or I accomplished something. And so if generally math is no longer required because computers can do it better, how do we validate ourselves? What do we put our skill set to? And I think that's the category that's yet to be defined is, yes, it's changing, but to what? We probably need to reimagine. And I think what's interesting about reimagining is different frameworks, like books like yours, that talk about imagining something different, thinking differently, right? We do not have the luxury to think status quo anymore. It is really about thinking about the future. So yeah, I'm super excited to read the book. Can't wait to learn more. But lastly, I want to end with some rapid fire questions, some tidbits, if you will, some quick takeaways for folks today. So If you're a security professional today or an executive today, what are 3 things you need to be thinking about to secure your applications?
I would be thinking about, what is your threat model? That
Mhm.
is a way in which you determine what you're trying to protect, against whom, where it'll be attacked. So
Yeah.
I'd think about your threat model. The second is, I would double check and then triple check your rationale between why you're investing the amount of money and effort into security. And I say that you should check that against who your opponent is.
Yeah.
The attacker is relentless, and consider, are you actually investing appropriately? And then the third thing that I would say, after you have your threat model and you've evaluated your investments, then I would think about, what methodology are you using, and is it the most appropriate methodology? I wrote a whole, Hackable literally writes to try to distill that down. It would be hard for me to explain in like one short soundbite, but basically make sure you're spending the right kind of effort with the right kind of people, sharing the right kind of information, spending the right kind of money, looking for the right kinds of things. And the spoiler is, most people are doing all of those backwards, let alone any of them right.
Wow. Okay. That's great advice. And lastly, if I had a blank canvas and a product team, at what stage should I be engaging either a security company like yourselves, or hacking company like yourselves, or my security team in that product?
Right now.
Right now.
And the reason is, it's easy and it's inexpensive. So think about that. You've got a blank canvas. What's the first thing you're talking about? Here's the business problem we're trying to solve. What are the ways we're going to try to solve it? And then you're, having this whiteboarding session of like, well, we could maybe do it this way, or we could do it that way. Here's 3 different ways we can do it. Okay, maybe we want to explore. This one seems like it has some legs to it. And the security person standing right there in the room, been part of the conversation, is like, just make sure it doesn't do this. Okay. We haven't built anything yet. We haven't wasted any time building anything. You now got the advice that would be so expensive and difficult to deal with later. And what did that cost you? Like, even paying a consult, like someone like us, you're paying for like a few hours. It's really a super small investment.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to have you on the show today. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find your book? Obviously, it's just been released. Is it on Amazon? Tell us more.
The simplest is just go to tedharrington.com. You'll find information on both my books, my keynotes, the hacking services that we do, where to find me on social media. It's all right there. It's just tedharrington.com.
Great. I will share the link in the YouTube clip. And thanks for coming. Really appreciate you. Great to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.